Are you struggling trying to find a preceptor for NP school? Or did you find somebody and at the last minute that person decided to ghost you? I've been there. In this video, I'm going to give you 8 tips that I wish I had when I was looking for an NP preceptor that will help you find a preceptor a lot faster. Now, if you're new to my page, welcome. It's your favorite NP mentor here. A little bit about me. I have my DNP. I'm dual certified in acute care and adult gerontology primary care. So enough about me. Let's get into this video. The first tip is start early. So let's say this is January, right? Spring semester. Now you need a preceptor for next spring, 2026. I suggest you start now, okay? Finding a preceptor is pretty difficult and people secure their preceptors way early in advance. So people are looking for 2026 or clinicals, they're starting now. So 6 to 12 months, at minimum 6 months, you should be starting to find a preceptor. Do not wait until the time comes where your semester is going to start in a few weeks or your semester is supposed to start in 1 or 2 months. That's not enough time, okay? Give yourself ample time to find someone, because if not, then you're going to be putting a lot of pressure on yourself. You're going to start getting a little bit anxious and overwhelmed when that time is coming closer and you haven't found anyone. So do me a huge favor and start early, okay? I promise you, you will thank me for this later. And the second thing is understand and know your program requirements. Now, if you are, let's say, for example, acute care, right? And you find someone who is adult gero working in primary care to precept you, they don't mind to do that. But your requirements is that you have to do inpatient and you have to be dealing with acutely ill patients, or you may be able to work in a specialty. Now, if you try to get someone who does not have the same certification that you are seeking, then that is when you're going to get into trouble. Now, the adult primary care gerontology program is completely different from the acute care requirements for the acute care program. So let me just explain this really quick. Now, adult gero, you're dealing with stable patients with acute on chronic or chronic conditions in an outpatient basis, right? But when you are working in acute care, you are dealing with patients who are acutely ill and they have acute on chronic illnesses, but they are unstable. You can also use your acute care certification to do cardiology, any sort of specialty. But when you're doing primary care, you have to stick to the patients that are stable, and it must be medicine, right? Because you can't be primary care and doing a specialty. Primary care is medicine. So you're dealing with medicine, no specialties. This is one of the reasons why you have to know the requirements for your program, because you're gonna go ahead, you're gonna find a preceptor, and then you're gonna find out that this person does not meet the requirements for your program. So then you have to start all over. Number 3 is use your network. I wish I would have networked before, okay? So how do you network and why is this important? Now, there are people that I know that graduated from school and had a job lined up for them even before they took their boards. Why this happens is because you network and you meet people, you know people, and people like you, and they will secure a job for you. Once they see how you work as a bedside nurse and your mannerism, you're easy to train, you don't act like you know everything, and people like to work with you and be around you, they will make sure they find a job for you, okay? Now, my issue was when I graduated, I did not network, so I had a hard time finding a job. I had a hard time finding a preceptor, because I was coming from acute care and I was working in cardiac surgery, balloon pumps, impellers, LVADs, all that fun stuff, cardiogenic shock, which I loved. And most of my career had been in cardiology. So now I moved from cardiology, heart failure, heart transplant, acute care, to outpatient primary care. I don't know any primary care doctors. All the doctors that I knew, all the nurse practitioners that I did know were all in acute care, which was not appropriate for my certification. So I struggled with that. And one of the things you have to remember is that you have to network. And how do you network? If you're working in a hospital and you know that there's a lead NP, there's always usually a lead NP that's in charge of all the nurse practitioners in the hospital, or there might be a nurse practitioner that you might know personally. Now, we all know each other, okay? Trust me. Even though I might work at one hospital, somebody else might work at another hospital, we all have friends. So even though I might be in acute care, I know people that work in adult general primary care because I worked there also before in the past. So not because I'm not currently there or that I don't work in that specialty doesn't mean I don't know people. So we all know people that know someone else that knows someone else. And this is the beauty about networking, is because once you know one person, you know two people, that person knows somebody else that knows somebody else, and they will find a preceptor for you. Even if it's on the basis of, listen, I have a friend, she just graduated from school, could you hook her up with a job? Or it could be, hey, I have a friend of a friend, she's looking for a preceptor, could you help her out? And people will help you based off of the request from someone else that you may not even know. Okay, so networking is huge. So please make sure you network even before you become a nurse practitioner student and you are not even in school yet. You start networking then, because I promise you, it will help you when you're looking for a job, right? And it will also help you when you are looking to find a preceptor, which is super important in the whole purpose of this entire video. So make sure you 100% do not skip this step. Number 4 is that you have to utilize your online resources. So for example, you may have LinkedIn. LinkedIn is your professional networking system. So this is where you can find nurse practitioners on LinkedIn. You could also contact nurse practitioners through LinkedIn. This is perfect, right? So LinkedIn is a good source where you can find preceptors because this is a professional networking system, right? You might be able to find somebody. So try LinkedIn, that's one. 2, you have your social media groups. If you have Facebook groups, Instagram groups, where you have nurse practitioners that are all gathered, this will be great for you because again, there's going to be somebody in there that knows somebody else that knows somebody else that will be able to help you get a preceptor. So don't forget about using social media as a means of finding a preceptor. And the other thing is they have Preceptor Matching Services, right? They have something called MP Hub. You can look up MP Hub and they actually match you with a preceptor. Now the cost may vary depending on how many hours you need and where you're going, but from what I've read, it looks like it's about $1,000 at minimum per semester, which isn't bad. Listen, some of us spend $1,000 buying a bag that we like, or we buy things that are quite expensive that we probably shouldn't buy. But again, expensive is subjective, okay? So if you're thinking about making sure you find a preceptor so you could graduate and make more money anyway, then that $1,000 means nothing. So I would suggest that you don't always look at the price, but look at the outcome, which is going to be you'll have less headache, you'll find a preceptor, and you'll graduate on time. So I think all of that kind of supersedes that $1,000, so keep that in mind. Anyway, the other option that you can use is EMP. EMP is another great resource that you can utilize to help you find a preceptor. As a matter of fact, I did have one student that reached out to me on EMP. There was a few people that reached out to me on EMP, and I was able to precept someone, and she knew no one from this state because she had just moved here. So it was pretty hard for her. She couldn't network. She didn't have any social media groups. For her, it was really difficult. So EMP really helped her to secure a preceptor. And number 5 is just search locally. You know, local hospitals, local doctor's offices, anything local. You could just try to find out, is there anybody precepting? You can talk to the educators in that hospital and see if they have any openings anywhere. I mean, this is probably the least favorable because, you know, you're fishing and trying to find someone and you're calling a bunch of people that you don't know. And I know this is probably not my favorite either. I would probably utilize this as my absolute last resort because I'm not the best at doing things like this. I kind of feel a little bit uncomfortable, and I'm always like, oh my God, I don't want to be asking or begging people. But when it comes down to like trying to graduate and get your degree, then I suggest you put all that aside, pride aside, and do what you need to do so you can secure a preceptor. And push comes to shove, I gotta do it, I'd get it done too. Not my favorite, but I would do it. Number 6, attend the local events. Sometimes they have these nurse practitioner like workshops. Sometimes they have these conferences. NPACE is another one that has a lot of conferences every year. When you go to these things, you network, you meet people, and I'm telling you, we all know each other somehow. So we all know somebody, I know somebody else, I know somebody else. And this makes it perfect because again, although that person might not be in the same field as you, we tend to know people who are not in our field, and we will help you find a preceptor. Go to these local events, bring your resume, and start meeting people. And I promise you, this will make your life easier, again, both to find a preceptor, A, and B, when you graduate, to find a job. Number 7, and follow up. You might send somebody an email, you might leave a message and no one calls you back. Call again. Send another email. I know you don't want to be a pest, but you want to graduate, right? Listen, I don't like calling people every 5 minutes. I don't like sending people a bunch of emails, but if it means that this will help me to graduate so I can find a preceptor and finish school, then do it, sis, bro. Take away the pride, follow up, and just be polite. You know, I'm not saying that you're going to send them an email like every 6 hours, you know, but you send an email today, you don't get a response, you wait a couple days, you send it again, because sometimes people read things, and I've done this, and I'm like, oh yeah, I have to respond, and something else might happen and I might forget, and then I get another email, I say, oh yeah, let me get back on this. It happens, people are human. So remember, we all have lives outside of being an NP, so you have to be a little bit persistent. And persistence will get you what you want. But if you just send one email and be like, oh, well, I don't got time for this, then you're going to struggle trying to find a preceptor. You want to graduate, so do what you got to do. And number 8, be flexible. Now, I know that there are a lot more positions at night for finding a preceptor than there is during the day. Nobody wants to work at night, and working night shift is not for everyone, but I can tell you, if you want to find a preceptor, you better work some nights, okay? And you'll find all your preceptors at night sometimes, because most people don't want to work at night. They want to work during the day, and day shift preceptors are sometimes a lot harder to find. I'm night shift, so I'm a little biased, but I'm only night shift because of my kids. Before my 7-year-old, I never worked a night shift a day in my life. She's about to be 8, so it's about 8 years since I've been doing night shift. Now, night shift has its ups and downs, but in short, I'm just going to tell you that at night you have less staff and it's more work. And that's what makes you a better practitioner, because you sink or you swim, right? And you learn a lot. And that's one of the reasons why I became a stronger NP, is because I was working nights and I was alone, or I may have somebody with me, but they're trying to keep their head above water too. So we're both running around. Okay, and these are the situations that make you stronger. And when you're in these situations, you got to think, You don't have anybody babying you and taking you by the hand. It's like, what are we doing with this patient? Because he's about to crash. Let's go. So make a decision. And sometimes you need that to get your footing so you could start running and stop walking. Okay? So that is not to say you're not busy during the day, but what I'm saying is there's less resources at night. And you got to use this a lot. Okay? And you got to be quick. So it helps to develop those skills a lot faster. So don't be afraid to work nights. Don't be afraid to go on a unit that you are unfamiliar with. So if you were always working in medical ICU, don't be afraid to do a rotation in cardiac surgery. You might like it. Don't be afraid to do a rotation in neurosurgery or neurocritical care, right? Or trauma, something that you've never done before, or as a hospitalist. Do something different, because that is what helps you to grow, and that is also what helps you to figure out what you do and don't like, right? Because if you just go to the same units that you've always worked on, how are you gonna learn something different, a different perspective? You wanna broaden your resume, you wanna broaden your knowledge, you wanna broaden your skill set. Don't be afraid to take chances, and don't be afraid to do things that are uncomfortable for you. Because remember, growth takes place when you're uncomfortable, not when you're comfortable. It's when you're pushed outside of your limits. So push yourself a little bit so that you can grow and so that you can be the best. Just saying. Okay. So the last thing I want to talk about is being a good person. Now, if you're one of the bedside nurses where you act like you know more than the NPs, you act like you know it all, you don't really take great care of your patients, and you are not approachable. I can't come to you and say, hey, why did you do this when you should have done that? Like, that should have been something you should have done first, whatever it is. And you're not that kind of person that people can approach you and say those things to you without you getting defensive, without you getting angry, without you rolling your eyes or having an attitude. I can promise you, when you graduate from school, no one will want to hire you, at least within that facility. I did know a nurse who was not nice, very standoffish and aggressive. Whenever she would come to me with something, she never came to me like, oh, do you think that maybe we should do this? It's more of like, why are we not doing this and why are we not doing that? Who are you talking to? So if you're going to approach me on some stuff like that, I can tell you 9 out of 10 times, I'm not listening to you. I don't care what you say. Okay? So point is, do not be that kind of person, because she was also like this with the doctors, right? And the doctors were just like, who? So they remember you, right? And the minute they find out you in NP school and they find out that you're trying to work in their department and work with them, it's a wrap. You can call it pretty much that. And the other thing too is, when you apply to another hospital, let's say you're working in like a sister hospital, we all know each other at the other hospital, right? So that manager might call and say, hey, such and such that works in such and such, do you know her? What do you think? Because she applied for XYZ position. They might say, oh, she is not someone that you'd want to work with because she's not a team player. She acts like she knows everything, and we cannot communicate with her because she doesn't listen. You ain't gonna get no job. It's gonna be hard for you. So I want to tell you that in this small NP world, it's a small world, we all know each other, okay? So do yourself a favor and be nice, okay? Because it will come back to bite you when you're looking for a job. Keep in mind that you can run, but you can't hide, because there's always somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody else. So that's the flip side of networking. Is when it's time again to find a job, your reputation will precede you. Remember that. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please make sure that you subscribe for more information from moi. And don't forget to leave a comment. If you have any questions, hit me up. I'm here. So happy to do this video. Anyway, see you for the next one. Bye.